Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SubQuery's Investor Series. And today I'm pleased to be joined by Danish Chaudhry from FMFW. Nice to see you again, Danish, and thanks for coming on the show.
Great. Thanks for having me, James. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So do you want to kick us off really quickly with a quick introduction of who you are and what FMFW is?
Cool. Yeah. As you said, my name is Danish Chaudhry. I'm CEO of an exchange called FMFW.io. It's like a spot and margin exchange with futures that we kind of launched about 2.5, 3 years ago. So we've kind of been operating kind of in the background a little bit. We're not as flashy as some of the other exchanges, but we plug into liquidity and matching engine that runs about 12% of global daily volume. So that's a little bit of our edge. We're kind of really there for users that want to trade high volume really frequently on our padded books sort of thing. Previously, this used to be Bitcoin.com exchange. So we used to be part of the Bitcoin.com family. At Bitcoin.com, we kind of focused on how to get your individual first person to try and buy crypto sort of thing. And then the exchange was a little bit more you bought crypto, come trade it sort of thing. But as of last year, we kind of separated out just so we could have separate brands and separate products sort of thing. So we've been FMFW since October of last year.
That's excellent. And it's interesting, you mentioned, you used to be part of Bitcoin.com, which is geared towards the more first-time investors getting into the market for the first time. And then FMFW is geared towards the more experienced, high-volume, high-frequency traders. How do you take a user from that entry level all the way to that kind of high-volume, high-frequency level? How do you make that jump?
Yeah, it's quite the process and quite the journey. I think we're obviously the last year in crypto has really helped in getting a person really interested in crypto. I mean, you didn't have to do anything. All of a sudden, the news kind of said you need to go buy some Bitcoin, and so everybody kind of naturally flocked in. But there's a process of education. There's making new tools available for them to actually get onboarded very easily. So we kind of make it very easy on the exchange where a person can put in like a bank transfer, put in their credit debit card details, buy the first bit of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then start trading. But once they have their first piece of crypto, we kind of take them on a journey of education, really teaching them. We've got dashboards that teach them, what certain coins do, how they're performing, what the background is. And we've got an education series where it teaches people how to trade, like how to place your first order, how to manage futures or manage margin and so on and so forth. So it's an education series, just not only from when they're in the system, it's from when they're just walking down the street sort of thing. Like, hey, let me teach you how these assets can work and what the benefits of each of these assets is, how they can aid you in your daily work and the gaps that are available, or you just want to speculate on certain projects performing sort of thing. So we take them to an entire journey of that on a constant basis and kind of handhold them throughout the process.
And I assume that the name Bitcoin.com doesn't obviously limit you to Bitcoin, right? You're looking at all the crypto assets and obviously we're not on Bitcoin, and so
it's all
outside of Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's all assets, and I think at FMFW we are an exchange, right? So we don't take sides. We are the middlemen. We allow people to trade one asset for the other without any sort of bias. And so obviously we tend to only list projects that are well vetted. They've got their utilities and not securities. We do a thorough KYC and a due diligence process, and then we list them. So on one side, we really tend to focus in on which project we're listing, like make sure that our users' money isn't going to get scammed. On the other hand, we're also like kind of in we're not biased in the sense that if you just want to get a token listed, we'll happily comply with that as long as they pass their checks.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
So you've obviously got a venture arm as well.
Yep.
Within this, and that's obviously why you're involved with us. Talk to me about why you set up a venture arm as an exchange, and I guess it's complementary to the DD process you have to go through a listing anyway. But what
Yeah,
was the thoughts behind that?
Yeah, I think the venture arm really is we're in this ecosystem where people are trading various assets, and various assets come online, and founders are building certain things. And I think it kind of only made sense that since we are what I would say both an on ramp and an off ramp for when a project's building, we're their on ramp for new users to start trading, or an off ramp for them to kind of get their tokens and trade. It really kind of made sense that we kind of delve deeper into the ecosystem, not only just sat on top. We want to go all the way to the bottom and back some of the founders and really get into their infrastructure and really help them succeed, so that the more projects there are and the more they succeed, the more traders there'll be on our exchange, and so on and so forth. So kind of like a self-fulfilling sort of process. So we kind of create a venture arm where we invest in various projects, like for example, like SubQuery. I think Sam and I started talking about a year and a half ago, and I was really impressed with what he was doing. That was one of our investments. I think we have made a few others across the Polkadot ecosystem, because we think, like, personally, my thesis is Polkadot's like really going to succeed at some point. Being that connectivity layer throughout some sort of projects. But we're also not tied into just Polkadot. We back some Nia project, we back some Terra projects, etc. But yeah, I think the venture arm just kind of made sense in really developing an entire ecosystem around the exchange.
Yeah, I'm curious to understand more about why you back so many Polkadot projects as opposed to potentially other layer ones. What apart from the interoperability part of it, which you touched on, is there anything else that particularly attracts you to Polkadot and the substrate?
I think it's just a bit of a more, Web3 itself, I think Gavin's done a really good job in, his background's in Ethereum as well. He's done a really good job in picking some of the shortcomings and really kind of, there's still a long way to go, I think, for Polkadot and for other projects, but I think he's done a really good job in really thinking through the tools that are available and really thinking through how, these projects apply to real life, rather than, hey, it's an extremely mathematical project and nobody knows how to integrate, nobody knows how to do anything. Like, when some of my teams were playing with Avalanche, for example, it was unusable for a very long time, and I think it still is very unusable. Like, how you get an X chain or a C chain and all that sort of stuff. I think other projects like Nia are pretty good. They're a little bit more thought through. I think Terra is now just becoming a thing over the course of, like, Doe has kind of been building for a very long time, and now it's just becoming something. But I think, like, with Polkadot, I think it's just a little bit more one of the mature ones out there, and I think it allows interconnectivity of various ecosystems. So, like, you've got the Moonbeam, who's like the Ethereum competitor. You've got Crust, which is decentralized storage. You've got Fala, which is also smart contracts. Like, all this sort of stuff just kind of then gets tied through the underlying dot layer. And obviously, there's the Kusama where you can test it out, Kusama network that you can test it out, and then there's the main dot network sort of thing for I guess what's not testnet. But yeah, I think it's just something that it's not a fad. And I think when I was really delving into it with the Web3 team, Dieter and Co, 3 years ago, it just looked like it was more of a mature project than, a bunch of college kids, just ragtag group of kids launching some sort of L1 that they'll hope will take flight one day, sort of thing.
That's fair enough. And I guess the big difference with Polkadot is it's not really an L1, is that it's more like an L0, and you have all these other networks like Moonbeam, for example, taking off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's been excellent seeing all the different projects kind of proliferate through Polkadot, and we've been working with a lot of them. I think it's going to be the next year or two is going to be really fascinating to see how potentially they might coalesce together and kind of join forces, or because you've got a couple of different projects doing the same or similar things. You've got a lot of novel ideas. But it's going to be interesting going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's always going to be overlap. I think, there's only so many problems that need to get solved, and only so many solutions that come around. So obviously there's there's unique solutions, but each unique solution has 2 or 3 competitors in the same space. I backed graph back in the day when there's just starting out sort of thing. And it just kind of made sense that, and SubQuery is kind of doing the same thing, but substrate based projects. And I think it kind of just made sense that if I backed Graph to do that on Ethereum, which, you know, they eventually got there sort of thing, it only made sense that, you know, I kind of, you know, hit up Sam and see what he's doing at SubQuery and back him essentially. So yeah, it'll be interesting over the next few years when more of these projects come around and there's like more of an interesting overlap.
No, definitely right. And I guess, you know, yes, obviously we are inspired by the graph, right? Like, no doubt about it. They've done an excellent job over in the Ethereum world, and in many ways they've done things really well done. They've really well thought it out. But working in Solidity and Polkadot gives us the option to do things in slightly different ways.
Yeah.
And I'm really actually looking forward to our token economic model. We've been refining it over the time, and we're about to release a new version, or it might be released by the time this video goes out. That has some key kind of differences in terms of how things are done, just to kind of separate that here on. But I'm really, it's tricky. It's one of those you have to be kind of creative how you think of different ways to do things, but also I find it's always good to just think of the real world. Like, try to think of a real world example of this is some concept that we do in the real world, and how do we then apply that to a decentralized way? How can we manage that on chain? Because humans are creatures of habit, right? We would prefer to do things in a similar way that we've done for years in the real world. Yeah. And I think a lot of projects that build way too complicated token economic models with all these crazy different things that only a mathematician can understand are just going down the wrong path. But we'll see. Maybe the collective intelligence of the world would just rise dramatically to kind of understand these things. But I certainly can't understand a lot of this.
Yeah, who knows, right? I mean, some people try to make it too complicated. Some people just follow the easiest path possible, sort of thing. So we'll see which one kind of fails.
There's a middle ground though. There's a Goldilocks zone between two.
Definitely, and that's like the holy grail of everything, right? So
exactly right. So if we change tack a bit, and with your venture arm, a new team comes to you from Polkadot or from the Polkadot ecosystem, and says, "Look, we're fundraising right now. What are like the key factors that you would look into when you're choosing whether to invest in a team or not? You know, you've been around the space for a long time. You've been involved with Web3 from the start. You've kind of seen this ecosystem flourish and grow."
So I do think let's just say like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I was investing more in well, actually, even now, like I would back something, and this is why like SubQuery came around, which is like infrastructure based, right? Something that like really helps and ties into the infrastructure, because the thesis behind SubQuery and a few of the other guys, or the other infrastructure plays that made was, no matter what happens, right? Let's just say play to earn gaming goes to shit. There's no social network on blockchain or whatever. Infrastructure plays will always stay. Like this, you're not ever going to take away, quote unquote, the blockchain. You're never going to take away substrate. You're not going to take away the basic layer of how Web3 basically works, right? And so that's kind of like what the thesis behind a lot of infrastructure plays was, and still is actually. I think if there is any layer 0 or layer 1 that's worth the time, I think it'll be exciting. But I do think right now the layer 1 game is a little saturated, and I think I've backed the right kind of horses that I'm going to go into or really back throughout the journey. And I kind of enable through our venture arm. We kind of do enable projects who kind of come at an idea stage. We work with for example Moonbeam, for example, or any other I guess even a call out or others where projects can build on top of their stack. I actively encourage them to use that rather than going out on their own or one of the other complicated blockchains. Like you can't build on Solana because Rust developers are so expensive, right? Like it's kind of like one of those things. And I guess you do get Rust developers Polkadot as well, but it's a lot more accessible. I think it's an easier build than Solana, for example. And I think other things that we're kind of looking at, and I really want to now focus on. little bit outside of on the complete stack of things, you've got the infrastructure, which is good, but I think now, once the ecosystem is populated enough to bring on the next 100 million or a billion users, you want to make it really, really accessible to them, right? You want to make it like they don't even know that they're using the blockchain. They don't even know that their data is coming from SubQuery or Graph or whatever. They don't even know that, if they're interacting with their Bored Apes, that's where they're on Ethereum or whatever, and they have to have a MetaMask address and do all this and stuff. So that, I think, hasn't happened yet, where the UI UX has really focused on making sure that the first-time customer is easily onboarded. It's not complicated. So I think that would be the future. Like, for example, if I want to send anybody, and some guys are doing it where, like, you've got Fiat Protocol, you've got Yats. Yeah, I'm a big investor in Yat, where you can extend, you can interact with each other using emojis on the internet. So it's part of, like, you can go to Opera browser and kind of put in like a heart emoji, and it will take you to somebody's emoji page. But yeah, I think that's really, really important over the next 2 years, where you kind of take it away from, a really core group of people building on a really core group of technical thing. You have to take into account that I want the next billion people in crypto, and how do I make that happen?
Yeah, no, it resonates as well. Like, we've gone through this phase of building the core layer 0 Polkadot chain. We've gone through this phase of now building these layer 1 protocols or parachains on top of that, and now we're in the era of the apps.
Exactly.
On top of those.
Exactly.
And that's something that we're enabling at SubQuery. And I guess it kind of feels like to us sometimes, when we talk to the customers, a lot of chains that haven't really got an app ecosystem yet, that we're a bit early, but we're here to help enable builders to build those apps.
Exactly, right? I think that's very key. I think that your SubQuery's tools are going to be so useful in building those dApps on top of this, where, like, I think, it will make it far more efficient for people to build around it, and kind of have that accessibility would be key.
Exactly right. I always say that when the day comes where my parents can use an app on blockchain and not know it's a blockchain app, we know we're there. We're done.
Exactly, right? I mean, hope, fingers crossed. We'll see when that happens.
Yeah, hopefully so. No, that's awesome. And so one question I always kind of finish with, which I'm interested to hear your thoughts on, is if you had to give advice to someone that was, thinking about coming to the ecosystem, or has been watching Web3 for a while, not quite sure what's going on there, or is this a developer leaving university and trying to figure out where their first job might be? What piece of advice would you kind of give those new entrants into the kind of the developer kind of community here, or they want to build or create something in blockchain, Web3?
Yeah, I think I would say, like, really take advantage of how accessible the community, the founders, and the projects are. Like, I think you shouldn't be afraid to step in and ask questions, or wanting to be asked to be connected with somebody who you really admire, somebody who you've spoken about. Because, like, I used to have a corporate background. I used to be an asset manager at a large asset management company, portfolio manager at a large asset management company in London. It's very corporate. Like, I had access to people only because I was managing billions. The average person does not have access to those people, right? And I think the blockchain or crypto/tech ecosystem specifically that we operate in is where, my exchange customers can ping me on Telegram and ask me questions, right? Or as a blockchain user, I can pop into somebody's Telegram and chat to the business development person, the CMO or the founder or whatever, or, like, their tech team. I can literally just call up. If I knew somebody wanting to get tech up, I'll be like, hey, Sam from SubQuery, I've got somebody who wants to have a chat. And they'll be like, yeah. Sam will be like, yeah, or James even. I'll be like, hey, James, this guy wants to have a chat about what's SubQuery like, how to get involved, all this sort of stuff. And you'd happily help them. So I think, like, that's something that isn't available in the traditional world. And, sometimes you could just be a emoji or a moniker on Telegram with a completely different name or whatever. Nobody cares about it. Nobody cares how old you are. Nobody cares about how young you are, what gender, etc. You're just a person that's contributing to the ecosystem. I think that's really key about it, and I think that's something that people should really take to heart. Is that it's a flat structure. All of like crypto is mostly what I would call a flat structure compared to like what a very hierarchical corporate structure is. And I think they shouldn't be afraid to reach out and just tweet somebody or get in their DMs and Telegram and be like, let's have a chat.
Yeah, everyone's got to like play a part, and you can't really hide behind legions of lawyers or
Exactly.
press officers or whatever.
Exactly.
Every CEO in crypto has to be very accessible and has to basically be seen.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's such a small community, right? It's such a small community that like it doesn't really, that bureaucracy has no place of it.
Yeah. There's nothing developers hate more than bureaucracy. And I guess it's a very developer-driven community right now, but there's nothing we hate more than bureaucracy.
Exactly.
That's the most anti-bureaucratic kind of ecosystem.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So yeah, just if you want to get started, just jump in and start asking questions. And I'd add to that, I think that as you go through, the only thing that really matters in the whole scheme of things is your reputation.
Yeah.
No one cares your background, no one cares like where you've been, but only in terms of like they do care if you've lied before, if you're deceived, if you kind of failed or like for a bad reason. Like failure is good. Failure, it's good to fail, but if you didn't own up to failure and be good about it, then reputation is something that you can't earn back easily.
Exactly. That's the thing, right? It's in the the ethos of transparency, that because it's all, as I would say, everything's on chain, right? Everybody knows anything. And so same as you said, like if you have done something wrong, if you need to fess up to something, it's more beneficial for you to kind of like just be like, hey, I did something wrong, here's what happened, everybody knows about it, you will get found out, everybody know about it. But I think like that's one of the things, that's one core ethos of the space, transparency. And I think you shouldn't be afraid to embrace that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Danish, thank you very much for joining us today.
No worries.
Thanks for staying up late to have a chat, and it was a pleasure.
Thanks,
guys.